Welcome to Pasadena Monthly, formerly known as News Wrap Local. I'm your host, Justin Chapman. Thanks for being here. Happy Pride Month. After taking a look at what's been going on in Pasadena this past month, we'll speak with our guest, Danny Feldman of the Pasadena Playhouse, which just won a Tony Award. But before we get started, let's check out these Pasadena Media News Briefs.
The 100-year-old Pasadena Central Library is designated a historic resource, and it was closed in 2021 due to seismic safety issues. Earlier this year, the City Council awarded a contract to Gruen Associates for design services for the library retrofit and renovations project. The Pasadena Central Library seismic retrofit is underway, and the project is currently in the beginning of the design phase, said Tim McDonald, director of the Department of Libraries and Information Services. Preserving the architectural integrity of the building is a top priority during the retrofit process. This first phase of environmental study and updated design planning is anticipated to take 2 years. The Pasadena Central Library will remain closed until the seismic retrofit is complete. Following the investigation into the fatal shooting of resident Anthony McLean, members of the City Council called for a review of policy in the Pasadena Police Department. We asked the chief to come back to us with a timeline for reviewing and adopting the recommendations that he believes should be adopted with the advice and consent of the Community Police Oversight Commission, said Mayor Victor Gordo. Pasadena's Community Oversight Commission has decided to move forward with discussions about the creation of a system to track the progress of the Pasadena Police Department's efforts to modify policy to more closely align with recent recommendations from the Office of Independent Review Group. The group's report suggests 27 procedural and policy recommendations for the Pasadena Police Department. A complete and unredacted copy of the report is available on the City of Pasadena website. On June 12th, members of the City Council approved proposed zoning code amendments that allow longer stays in emergency shelters and allow homeless people to park on certain sites occupied by colleges and churches. Under the existing zoning code, emergency shelters are defined as a nonprofit facility that provides short-term lodging without rent or fees on a first-come, first-served basis, where people must vacate the facility each morning and have no guaranteed bed for the next night. The proposed amendment strikes the phrase, where people must vacate the facility each morning and have no guaranteed bed for the next night. This allows for longer stays. In addition, the amendment updates the bed capacity from 12 beds to a maximum of 40 beds. Currently, the zoning and bed limit allow up to 372 shelter beds. The proposed amendment will allow up to 2,400 shelter beds.
Let's turn next to our lightning round of news updates. 1. Both the Pasadena Unified School District Superintendent and the Pasadena City College Superintendent are resigning. PUSD's Dr. Brian McDonald's last day is June 30th, and Dr. Erica Endrahonis's last day is July 31st. Last month, McDonald was a finalist for the superintendent position in the Columbus, Ohio School District, but he did not get the job. The PUSD Board of Education voted 6-1 to approve the acceptance of his resignation agreement. He joined PUSD in 2011 and served as superintendent since 2014, making him one of, if not the longest serving superintendents in PUSD history. PCC's Andrew Jonas was selected as the next superintendent and president of the Santa Barbara Community College District, and she begins August 1st. The PCC Board of Trustees unanimously selected educator and administrator Dr. Jose Gomez to serve as interim superintendent and president. 2. The Metro Light Rail train line, known as the Gold Line and later the L Line, is no more. The Metro Regional Connector recently opened and connects the A, E, and L lines. The former Gold or L Line's path from Union Station to Pasadena and eastern San Gabriel Valley is now part of the A Line, formerly known as the Blue Line, and the section from Union Station to East LA has been added to the E or Expo line. This means passengers can travel from Azusa through Pasadena, then through downtown LA and all the way to Long Beach without transferring to a second train. The Regional Connector project, first dreamt up in the 70s, started in 2014 and cost about $1.8 billion. 3. After seeing a decrease in the number of unhoused individuals on the streets of Pasadena for about 4 years, the city reported an increase of 9% during its point-in-time homeless count in January. Volunteers counted 556 people experiencing homelessness, up from 512 people in last year's count. This increase comes despite the city permanently housing 310 people last year, more than ever before, and a 48% increase since 2019. Meanwhile, the City Council voted to extend the Safe Haven Bridge to Housing program run by Union Station Homeless Services and All Saints Church, which provides a safe outdoor overnight sleeping space on the campus of the church for up to 12 people, and approved an agreement with Friends Indeed to provide street outreach services. The council also amended the zoning code to allow longer stays in emergency shelters and allow the unhoused to park on certain sites occupied by colleges and churches. The change increases the number of shelter beds from 372 to 2,400. 4, the City Council unanimously adopted its $1.2 billion annual operating budget for fiscal year 23 to 24. It's the first time the city has had a budget of more than $1 billion, and it's nearly $300 million more dollars than last year. The Housing Department received some additional funding to provide for weather-activated shelter services for people experiencing homelessness. The budget also includes a 13% increase for the Department of Transportation, an 11.5% increase for Parks, Recreation, and Community Service Department, an 11% increase for the Fire Department, and a 7% increase for the Police Department. The council also approved the schedule of taxes for 2024 that lifts rates 5%. The council also approved $6 million to resurface streets throughout the city, which will rehab about 8 miles of road. 5, the Rental Housing Board is underway. Ryan Bell has been elected chair and Brandon Lamar vice chair for the first year. The board approved a $50,000 agreement with Goldfarb Lippman Attorneys to provide interim legal services, a $25,000 agreement with Allegra Consulting to provide interim PR services, and a nearly $75,000 agreement with Beehive Consulting to provide interim staffing and consultant services. The board also determined that since the Consumer Price Index comes in at 3.7% this year, landlords can raise rents no more than 2.75% in Pasadena starting October 1st. 6, the local hate crimes continue as arsonists destroyed a pride flag at the Pasadena Buddhist Temple. All Saints Church continue to receive threats after the previous 2 threats related to their support of the LGBTQ plus community, and the new local black-owned bookstore, Octavia's Bookshelf, was burglarized. The flag was created by a local artist, Alan Nakagawa. Pasadena Village donated $500 to the temple to show their support, so it's heartening to see some good emerge from the bad. Meanwhile, the city raised its own pride flag at City Hall and held related celebrations throughout Pride Month. But police continue to investigate the break-in and burglary of Octavia's Bookshelf, which owner Nikki High announced on Instagram. Early in the morning of June 5th, someone kicked in the door and stole cash from the register. Nikki said that in possibly related incidents, someone has left feces by the front door of the bookstore, twice. 7, Regal Paseo has opened at the former ArcLight Cinemas Theater in the Paseo Shopping Center. The 14-screen movie theater was acquired by Regal Entertainment Group in April after ArcLight closed 3 years ago. This follows Landmark's reopening of the former Laemmle's Playhouse 7 theater recently. Good news for Pasadena theater goers. 8, there will be no America Fest 4th of July show at the Rose Bowl this year, but there will still be a fireworks show, though it will be part of the LA Galaxy versus LAFC soccer game, which was rescheduled from February 25th due to the winter storms. Rose Bowl general manager Jens Wyden said the stadium lost $500,000 from last year's America Fest, and so the show would need to be reworked if it returns in the future. In one sense, it's a return to true tradition, because in the 90s, fireworks followed the LA Galaxy games at the stadium. The fireworks this year are being handled by Pyro Spectaculars, the same group the stadium has used for decades. The shells are the same size, and it will be a similar length show. Only ticket holders will be allowed to park around the stadium. 9, 2024 election update. Rental Housing Board Vice Chair, founder and president of the Pasadena Young Democrats, board member of Leadership Pasadena, and community organizer Brandon Lamar has announced that he is running again for the District 3 City Council seat. Last year, Lamar ran against then-incumbent John Kennedy, who won re-election and passed away shortly thereafter. The council appointed Justin Jones to replace Kennedy for his previous term and the first half of his newly won term over Lamar and Lucia Smith. The winner of this election will serve the second half of Kennedy's term, ending in December 2026. Incumbent District 4 City Council member Gene Masuda also announced that he is running for a 4th term. And in the PCC Board of Trustees race, local attorney and education advocate Ryan Liu announced he is running for the Area 6 seat, currently held by John Martin, first elected in 1979. The election will be held March 5th, 2024. And 10, the city of Pasadena will purchase up to 2 or 3 dozen vacant houses from Caltrans this year at the original prices that Caltrans paid decades ago when they took over the homes with the ultimately abandoned plan to tear them down to connect the 710 and 210 freeways. The city will likely sell the majority of those homes at market rate in as-is condition, and the net proceeds will go toward building affordable housing throughout the city. The city may also work with Habitat for Humanity to rehab some of the smaller, more modest, non-historic homes and sell them as affordable first-time home buyer units at below market rate prices with a local Pasadena preference. The city and the Reconnecting Communities 710 Advisory Group also posted a request for proposals for a report about the history of the 710 displacement. Let's patch in our guest, Danny Feldman, producing artistic director of the Pasadena Playhouse. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Justin. Excited to be here.
The Playhouse, which was founded in 1917, just won the 2023 Regional Theater Tony Award for its artistic excellence, significant contributions to the local and global theater scene, and commitment to developing innovative works and supporting talented artists. Danny accepted the award on behalf of the Playhouse on June 11th at the 76th Annual Tony Awards at the United Palace in New York City. And the Mark Taper Forum is the only other Los Angeles area theater to receive this award. The California State Legislature unanimously designated the Playhouse as the official state theater of California in 1937, and Danny was named producing artistic director in 2016. So, Danny, the Playhouse, over 100 years old. The theater building itself will celebrate its centennial in 2025. Give us a brief history of the theater, including the careers it's launched and what it means to the Pasadena community.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me here. I'm excited to talk with you about this. So Pasadena Playhouse has one of the most extraordinary origin stories of any theater in the country. In 1917, a group of folks here in Pasadena met at a house down on Orange Grove, led by a young guy named Gilmore Brown, and they said, we're going to build a theater. A great community needs a great theater. They were very interested in the arts and culture and understood the value of it. And quickly, they started putting on shows. They actually put the first show on at the Shakespeare Club. They moved to a burlesque house down the street, which is a fun detail of our history. And it caught on like wildfire. Everyone in town was seeing the shows, was involved in the shows, was making the costumes, was being in the shows. It was a real community-centric effort. And within just a few short years, from 1917 to basically 1923, 24, they said, we're going to build the most beautiful building, most beautiful theater that ever was. And they did it. And they raised the money from the community. It was the first time ever that had happened in the country, that a community came together to raise the money to build a beautiful playhouse. It opened to much fanfare within just a few short years. Partly because of our connection, our closeness and proximity to Hollywood, it became an acting school. The studios were doing silent films and they were transitioning to talkies, and they realized, wait a minute, none of our actors can actually act. And so they said, hey, Pasadena Playhouse, the most famous theater in this side of the Mississippi, will you launch an acting program? And we did here. And some of the great actors of our time came and trained here at the Playhouse. The folks we know today, everyone from Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman, Sally Struthers, Joanne Worley, but Robert Preston, and you go way back to some old folks who were here in the late 20s and 30s. And the theater was really the center of American theater this side of the Mississippi. Tennessee Williams world premiere plays here. Eugene O'Neill world premiere plays here. George Bernard Shaw, we did a Shaw Festival, and he called this the Athens of the West. That's where that quote comes from about Pasadena and the Playhouse. It was really one of the most important theaters in American history. And so because of that longevity, one of the oldest operating theaters, this was extremely meaningful, in particular because, as many of your viewers probably know, the Playhouse had a lot of ups and downs. We went dark in the 60s when our founder passed away. The theater was brought back by the community, was saved by the community. It almost was torn down a couple times, and was brought back in the 80s into the 90s. And still then even had some financial troubles despite the art being made. And we went bankrupt in 2009-10, but came back. And still, when I walked in the doors in late 2016, we're having some real challenges. So it's a dramatic story, like all great dramas, of a lot of ups and downs. But and I think that's what makes it particularly resonant and meaningful to win this great award and to be honored in this way.
Yeah, and you mentioned the financial struggles, and then of course, in addition to the 60s, the 2010 era, there's also the challenges related to the pandemic. but
right.
it seems to always find a way to come back stronger on the other side. I mean, that said, last week, the Mark Taper Forum Theater announced it's canceling its 23-24 season, which is, seen rightly or wrongly as a bellwether for regional theaters across the country. So where do things stand now for the Playhouse?
Yeah, I think it's rightfully seen as a bellwether for it. If you look at Oregon Shakespeare Festival or other major theater on the West Coast of that size, also experiencing very similar problems. The narrative is really easy to understand, and basically our models of our business were already really stretched. We're not-for-profit organizations; they were very stretched coming into the pandemic. With national declines in audience spread out over time. The pandemic really accelerated a lot of these trends. And some of us have been having a hard time getting folks coming back. We at the Playhouse have had a success story with our Sondheim celebration. Our membership, which is our version of subscription, our membership actually was up over 20% this year because of the work we did with our festival. But in general, we are feeling the pinch too, particularly with our plays. But not only are audiences not coming back in the same pre-pandemic numbers, our costs have skyrocketed. Everyone feels that and understands that from inflation and all the reasons, but our labor costs have gone up, labor shortages in the field, because we were a field that was the first to shut down and the last to come back, right? So there's a lot of outside pressures and business model pressures already on us. And what you're seeing, we're all heading in the same direction of these challenges. And some theaters are out a little more ahead than others of receiving that and having to make some big decisions about it. I'm really proud of the Playhouse and our board of trustees and our donor base and our audiences who came back in much larger numbers than normal this year. But we still face those headwinds of costs. Of are people going to come back next year when there's not a big Sondheim celebration? Hopefully our Tony will help that. But it's a treacherous time right now, not just here in the greater LA area, but all over the country. We're hearing the exact same stories from our colleagues in New York and from all over the country. And it's really an assessment time for folks watching to decide, do we want great cultural institutions in our communities, and what are we going to do about it? This is the moment to become members. This is the moment to buy tickets. This is the moment to write checks to donate and volunteer. It's really about the fabric of our communities, let alone the impact we make, not just here for our audiences, but in schools all over. We did a landmark partnership with Pasadena Unified this year. And we really work deeply with the community. So it's a critical moment for support. And we're flying high from this great honor and from a successful year, but we are clear-eyed about the need to grow our membership base. We're still much lower than we were in the 90s, for instance.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the best way for the Pasadena community to support the Playhouse? And it sounds like go see the shows.
Go see the shows, become a member. Membership is a great way. It's the cheapest ticket price. You get the best seats, and you get to go along for the ride that we're curating for the community. There may be shows you've heard of, there may be shows you've never heard of, but it's really about developing a community of folks who care about arts and culture in their community, who'll come along for the ride and be proud that we now have a Tony-winning theater in our backyard. I think it's something I am proud of, and I hope everyone in the community is, that we have a world-class theater right here on El Molino in Pasadena.
Yeah, and so you recently accepted the Tony Award on behalf of the Playhouse. Tell us what the award means to the Playhouse community, and then what it was like at the ceremony. What was your message in your thank you speech
right now? Here's the Tony. We love spinning it. It's heavier than you would imagine it to be. It was a pretty wild out-of-body experience because the greats of the American theater of today are all sitting in one room, and we are addressing them as the Playhouse. They played a lovely video about our history to educate folks. But it was wonderful because we really felt the love. A lot of the work we've been doing here at the Playhouse, especially in the last couple of years, has really been speaking to a national audience. We did a big hit production of Little Shop of Horrors, our Sondheim celebration, some of the plays we've done. So folks in the room knew us and liked us and were grateful for the work we were doing, which is really a humbling feeling. Being a kid from Los Angeles and being here in Pasadena, to have the highest honor and the highest stage of the American theater give us this great honor. So it was very meaningful to all of us, a validation of the work we've been doing, a validation to our board of trustees and to our supporters for all being part of something. And it truly is an award that belongs to our community. This is not my award. This isn't just the Playhouse. The Playhouse is made up of people going all the way back from 1917 to today that have fought to keep it going and to help it thrive through good times and bad times. And it's really a recognition of them, of all the artists that have been on this stage and given so much of themselves, and all the folks who've been sitting in the seats and making sure we're still here. So it truly is the highest honor for us, and really a validation of everything we've been doing.
That's great. And there's also a growing effort to expand the impact of the Playhouse District with the Playhouse as the cornerstone of that. Of course, it's right in the name, making it more of a destination like Old Pasadena, South Lake Avenue. And so there's been the recent reopening of the Ice House, reopening of the old Lemley Theater, now Landmark, Vroman's, of course, number of restaurants and shops around that area. Are you feeling this growing sense of community in that district? Do you notice the expansion, and what role does the Playhouse play in that?
Absolutely. The Playhouse District is now called the Playhouse Village. It was a rebranding effort because was really important to all of us who live here or work here, that this is a village. It's really a place to work and to live and to spend time. I will say, when I started here at the Playhouse, it has been a total transformation of this area. There's foot traffic. There's people just walking the streets for lunchtime. There's businesses all over the place. It's a thriving part of Pasadena, and folks who haven't been here for a while or who have not checked it out, please come check it out. We have great restaurants. We have a restaurant open right here at the Playhouse in our courtyard called Bar Chalou. LA Times just listed as one of the top new restaurants in Los Angeles. It's really a world-class destination that we are proud and honored to be the name of. But that's probably just because we're so old that we were the only thing standing when they built the Playhouse. It was orange groves. But we're proud to have been here this whole time and really, really love our community and love our local businesses here, and the folks who live here. There are a lot of new housing in the Playhouse Village.
So tell us about some of the shows coming up at the Playhouse.
Yeah, so our first show coming up this summer is actually the final show of this season. It feels like the season's been going on forever. It's a new play, the polar opposite of a big Sondheim musical, called Stew, written by Zora Howard. It centers around 3 generations of Black women, takes place in the kitchen. It is hilarious. It is very funny, but it also has a bite to it, and there's some surprises along the way. Really a powerful evening of theater that'll be vastly entertaining. And then we start next season. Next season's one of our most exciting seasons we've ever planned, the perfect follow-up to this. We start in September with a new play called The Sound Inside. We're doing Inherit the Wind, that great old classic that is more relevant today than ever. We're doing a fresh take on that, which you're not going to want to miss. A one-woman show by a woman named Kate Berlant, who people much younger than me know and love. And it's a fantastic show. We're doing a world premiere play that we commissioned at the Playhouse, and the play is set in Pasadena. We've never done that before. It's a play about a family living in Pasadena. And then Jelly's Last Jam, one of the great musicals of the last 50 years, with tap dancing and a great story. So it's a really, really exciting season, and a holiday show, the return of a holiday show here, a variety show that we're putting together.
Great. Well, that sounds great. I encourage everyone to go see those shows and support the Playhouse, and congratulations on this honor. It's a really exciting for the Playhouse, for Pasadena in general, and further solidifies Pasadena's cultural, artistic impact. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, a world-class city deserves world-class arts and culture. So we got it now. Thank you, everyone.
Right. That's awesome. Thanks, Danny. Before we go, here's this month in Pasadena history. It was this month in 1947 when Octavia Butler was born right here in Pasadena on June 22nd, which is today, the day we're filming this episode. Octavia was an extremely talented science fiction author and a multiple recipient of the Hugo and Nebula Awards. In 1995, she became the first science fiction writer to receive a MacArthur Fellowship. As mentioned earlier, a Black-owned bookstore named after Octavia, which is dedicated solely to Black, Indigenous, and authors of color, opened earlier this year and deserves the community's support. Happy birthday, Octavia Butler. Thanks for your work. And thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of Pasadena Monthly. Tune in every 4th Friday of the month at 5 p.m. Learn more at pasadenamedia.org and justindouglaschapman.com. Drop me a line at jchapman@cityofpasadena.net. See you next time.
you.